And I'm back. All right. I'm wearing my sleuth hat, my Sherlock Holmes hat. I got my spyglass here, magnifying glass, if you will. And the reason why I have all this getup and garb is because I wanted to talk, and of course I'm smoking The Haunting still, which is perfect for this because, well, we're going to travel back in time at a few points. I've mentioned this before, but one of the things I'm interested in is serial killers. And, well, I guess we should talk about the granddaddy of all serial killers, or the modern day serial killer. I mean, there's been many fiends before him, but he's the one who gets credit, I guess you could say, with being the start of the modern serial killer, if you will. So tonight I'm going to talk about Jack the Ripper and why. So the why, I've said this before, goes back to when I was about 11 years old, almost 12 years old. And there were a few things that were happening in my life. One, the New Bedford Highway murders were happening. So I was getting curious about that. Then there was around now, the same week of my birthday. Well, it ended on the day before my birthday. I remember that. It was a miniseries, but with Michael Caine, called Jack the Ripper. It was on ABC or NBC. I think it was like 4 or 5 episodes. And I was captivated by it. Now, all that stuff has been outdated, like the information. And I was kind of a ripperologist back in the day. I was really into all things Jack the Ripper, JFK assassination, would there be another one? But since I've gotten older and everything, and I want to say in the early 2000s, I kind of parted ways with the whole Jack the Ripper thing. Because it was kind of one of those quagmires where you're never going to find an answer. But the thing that I want to talk about tonight is not who it is, or who I think it is, or, well, even really why he did what he did, other than him being the devil in the flesh and kind of appearing and then disappearing in the London fog type of stuff. What always struck to me, and this is part of the reason with like the New Bedford Highway murders, is they just kind of stopped. And that has always been my problem. Well, in the New Bedford Highway murders, he stopped or he moved on. He went to prison. The same thing with Jack, but Jack had this crescendo, so to speak, with Mary Kelly. I mean, he butchered her beyond anything. It was horrifying. But anyway, so Jack had his crescendo, and what happened, like me, the problem I've always had was him just stopping. Now, I've done some, and back in the 90s, when the internet was just starting, I would try to research this all the time. I was trying to look for cases similar to Jack the Ripper that happened after the fact. And there were some sort of like that. Give me a moment here. I gotta light up my pipe and contemplate this. And I never really got a clear-cut answer. And that was part of the problem with Jack the Ripper. So, in a roundabout way, and I think, I want to say, several years ago, like every now and then I check in with Jack, and what's going on with the Ripperologists and stuff, and see what's going on, or I'll see a special on Discovery or ID or something like that. I think the last one I saw, I want to say 2009, 2010, no later than 12, where they did this forensic location kind of thing and kind of pinpointed, and it's something I always believed. I didn't believe in the doctor theory, the rich part of the royal family type thing. I always thought, and that's what that miniseries was really about, if I remember right. And that seemed too far-fetched. Seemed too, the whole conspiracy thing, although with the pandemic and everything going on, well, I'm starting to believe some conspiracy theories. But anyway, enough about that. Maybe that's for another day. So back to Jack, I always thought it had to be someone that could blend in and whatnot. So this forensic location of the high probability of where they lived kind of solidified it for me. They had a bullseye where all the murders were, they traced out, and then the highest probability where they lived, and which I believe turned out to be a Kosminski. And of course they had some DNA that linked him to it. We'll never know for certain, but who knows? So in my eyes, I was like, all right, it is what it is. You got to move on. But for me, the curious thing is the why he just stopped. Now, in my research here, I got to pull out my notebook from today. So I had some notes on what I wanted to kind of bring up here, and I don't want to forget. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, so there were other murders. I just want to make sure I got them. One of them being the torso murders, which seems odd in a way, because if you go by Jack's last victim, the Conical Five, right, with Mary Kelly, and he mutilated her and butchered her, you could see these torsos that they kept finding in London. There was a few. I think there was like 3 or 4 after the fact, after Mary Kelly, that were turning up, and they were mutilated a bit and whatnot. You would think, okay, maybe Jack upped his game and evolved. Because in a way, you got to look at it like, all right, so Jack, he killed the other previous 4 out on the street, ripped their guts out and, did his thing. And Mary Kelly was different because he went back to her place and did what he did. That's kind of showing that he's evolved his MO, or it was an opportunity and he took it and he finally had that crescendo, that release of whatever it was, and then that's allegedly it, right? But if you believe the torso killings of that, you could say, all right, that's just another step of him evolving and kind of butchering the bodies even more than they need to be. I don't know. It's a possibility, but I'm not buying it per se. And then there was the, what else do we got there? Oh, then there's a strangled boy that was strangled, and I think he was mutilated a little bit too, but that's out of Jack's MO, because obviously he's hunting women, he's got a problem with women, and I'm not sure. This is a definite no for me. But then I was trying to search, I'm like, all right, so I kind of put my thinking cap on, I'm like, all right, so modern serial killers, when I'm looking at them, they have their cooling off periods, right? And I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, the BTK is one where he killed, and then he took like, 20 some odd years off, or 25? What, Jack himself, did he do that as well? Did he have that crescendo with Mary Kelly because it was like a release? He did the ultimate, right? He butchered her and slaughtered her, unrecognizable, and then he just goes about his day. Like, whatever is driving him to do that is released, and then it's going to pent itself up again, right? So to speak. So I'm thinking to myself, all right, so what happened? Yeah, I think the torso murders were maybe 5 years after that. Hard to say. I can't remember. I don't have that written down. You think I would have wrote that down. But they were within 5 years. It might even been sooner. It might have been a year or several months, right? But I wouldn't even for like 10, 15, 20 years. And I didn't find anything really except for, what was it? Was it Mary Brown? Something Brown in New York City, where there was a woman prostitute and she was mutilated and whatnot. And I believe in her own place, if I remember. Very much like Mary Kelly, but I don't think mutilated is bad. I'd have to research that. But I didn't before here. You'd think I would. But that wasn't the key point here for this video is the why he stopped. I don't think he came over to the U.S., although, what's his name? Is it Tremblay or whatever his name is? The quack that they thought was a possibility that it could be him. I don't think it's him. But again, we'll never know with 100% certainty. It's lost to time, really, at the end of the day. I think. That's my estimation. I don't think we'll ever figure that out. Well, I can't never say never, because with DNA, I know they found some with Kosminski, supposedly, but that's hard to say. there's questions about that. Even the people that come up with the tests were kind of questioning those results. So who knows for certain? But I don't think he jumped the ship, came over to New York or anything like that. But I tried looking again, same roadblock, same thing like with the New Bedford Highway murder, is I would look for cases that were similar in the last, some odd years, and nothing. So this leads me to believe, all right, so how old was Jack when these murders take place? I would imagine he's in his 20s, late 20s, probably 28-ish, if I had to guess. And he committed these murders, and he was able to go on about his life. And I think he settled down, kind of like BTK, went about his life. And maybe he was too old when he got older. I'm not sure. And he just couldn't do it anymore. Like he couldn't, like BTK thought he could. He tried to do, well, I think he did succeed, but it was a struggle. And even with the Golden State Killer, he did the same thing when he was older. The woman put up a fight, I believe. This is just going off my memory here. And I think he was successful, but he realized, I can't do this anymore. And he kind of just goes underground at some point. But that rage is still in there somehow, some way. And I think Jack might have done that because Mary Kelly was such a release for him. So it's interesting. Now, the other thing is, like, all right, did he die? Did he get imprisoned? Did he get put in an asylum? Which is probably a good chance of that, because that seemed to happen a lot back in those days. Like the Victorians were always throwing people in asylums, it seems. I remember when I was little, I used to think, I think I even asked my father this. I said, Dad, why didn't Sherlock Holmes catch Jack the Ripper? And he laughed. He goes, well, Sherlock Holmes isn't real. Well, matter of fact, I think that's when I got into Sherlock Holmes, around that age. I read The Hounds of Baskerville, and my inquisitive mind into criminal intent kind of was piqued then. And hopefully Redcoats and Newton Piper. Redcoats returns, and Newton Piper enjoy this perspective from me from over on this side of the pond here. I think Newton Piper's in across the pond. I could be wrong with that. And if I am, I apologize, Newton. But yeah, it's that always baffled me, the sudden stop. I think he was probably, and then you read some of the suspects and you see some died, committed suicide or all that, and you're like, huh, okay, that makes sense why it stopped. But I don't think that's it. I think that's too simple of an answer, really, for Jack, right? I think he cooled off. He had that thrill and then kind of petered off into retirement, so to speak. I guess if you're Jack the Ripper and you kill Mary Kelly and you're done butchering her, you got that release, that whatever's making you do that, and it kind of just leaves. Whatever devil entered that person, and it's gone, and then you go about your life, but it's still there. Like serial killers always have that impulse and need to do that. And you would think, all right, well, I don't need to do it anymore because the papers are all writing about me, people are writing books about me, speculating, so I get to go on and smile and laugh because I know what the truth is, and I get that fulfillment from there, and I don't have to kill anymore. I got away with murder, right? So I could see why he would just retire, and I don't mean to retire like, he just quit his, after 30 years working somewhere, he was able to just, hey, I'm good, life is good type of thing. I'm just saying, that was it. He didn't have to do it anymore. Now, I know my friend who does the serial killing podcast, she might disagree with me on these theories. I'd be interested to see what her theory is on Jack. I'll probably have to shoot her a DM on this after this. Good old Saucy Jack. And I don't think the letters that he wrote were actually from him. I mean, the From Hell letter seems very possible, but then again, that could have been sent from medical students because it was easy to get, apparently, a hold of human organs back then. Not just when you're mutilating them on the street, but, you know, with cadavers and stuff. There was that whole practice of grave robbing, so to speak, I believe, in the Victorian times. So the rumor is the medical students sent that for a joke. And of course the papers, which is the crazy thing with Jack the Ripper, is very much like our media and our social media today, and the sensationalizing of things and people making up things. Fake news, basically, at its start. With them writing letters to the editors and everything, and just to sell papers, to keep it going. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Humans, we never change, do we? So I don't know. I'm curious to think, what are your theories on Jack the Ripper? Who was it? Who do you think did it? Why would he stop? That's my biggest thing, is why did he stop? I know there's some interesting cases of who his first victims could be, which always kinds of points. I think they missed those opportunities to catch the person and probably would have prevented, but we'll never know, right? Because, like I said, it's lost to time. Mistakes were made, etc. We'll never know, but that's usually when you try to catch those guys, because the first few murders are usually sloppy and, you know, they don't know what they're doing. Then they kind of get into their wheel, like they find they're ready to go. They know what they're doing. They're a well-oiled machine, and then, you know, they hit the last one is that release, and then they're good for who knows how long. But I'm curious what you guys think. And Redcoat, I'm wondering, and you probably had to have done this when you're in London, taking the Jack the Ripper tour. That's kind of on my bucket list. I'm not one for wanting to travel abroad or to Europe or anything like that. There's a lot of things in the States to see, but I would actually just travel to London just to do that and then get on a plane and come home. By the way, if you're a pipe smoker, I just did a video on this, The Haunting. This is really worth it. This is pretty cool. Thought it was pretty fitting for what we're talking about tonight. So I guess for me, the who Jack the Ripper was, and that doesn't matter to me, because like I said, it's lost the time, and I'm kind of repeating myself here, but the why did he stop right then and there? I can kind of see it, because that was the big crescendo, right? That was the big release. Got it off his chest, so to speak. And then just moved on with life. But serial killers, I know they have their cooling off periods, but they always go back to it usually. But BTK didn't do that. He kind of, you know, he got older and then realized he couldn't really do that. And even the Golden State Killer, same thing. There comes to a point like, all right, I can't do this crap anymore. It's almost like an analogy would be sports, right? Like you see an athlete like me. I'm a Dolphins fan, big Dan Marino fan. You see him play, he's at the top of his game for all those years. He's doing great. And then he gets injured, or, you know, he got an injury with his neck against the Patriots, sat out, came back, and he was never the same again. And that's kind of how I feel like this was like. Like he did his thing, and then he released, but years go by, and then he's too old. He's in maybe his 40s or 50s, and at that time, you know, living in those ages is, you know, you a little bit of wear and tear. It's not like today, where, you know, 60, 70 years old is, you're kind of pretty fit and able to do things. Back then, it was a little different, right? So, and it's a hard life. In Whitechapel, it was a hard life. It was not an easy life by any stretch of the imagination. You know, one of my favorite authors, Jack London, wrote a book about Whitechapel and the misery that was there at the time when it happened. So you got to think, maybe it's like, all right, I did my thing. I'm good. See you later. I don't know. It's a very interesting, that's the most intriguing thing to me. And same thing with the New Bedford Highway murders, is them stopping. What happened? Did he die? Did he get imprisoned? Did he just move on? And I always think of, like, with BTK, kind of a similar thing. Like, he did his thing. He was able to move on, get away with murder. he did torment the police, the New Bedford highway killer, to a degree where he dumped the bodies and stuff. Didn't write to the police that I know of or anything, but tormented the police, putting bodies where they were repeatedly. And then he just kind of got this, he just could move on, and then for 20 years sat around, and then he realized, I'm too old to do that. I don't want to get caught. And when with all the DNA stuff and everything they can do these days, I'll get caught. I can't do it. So, I don't know. That's an interesting case, too. Someday I'll talk about that, too. Or I'll do a podcast. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Hope you guys enjoyed this long video on Jack the Ripper and all that stuff. So, it's just a case that always fascinated me. It's kind of the, like a lot of us that get into serial killers or the criminal mind, the psychology of them or whatever. It kind of all starts with him, probably Sherlock Holmes, and a personal experience with a serial murderer that's within their region or something. You kind of get sucked into it. It's an interesting thing. But that's going to do it. I'm going to enjoy my pipe, finish this up, and relax. And I will see you guys probably tomorrow. Take care.